Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I am making a layout using the May My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. You can tell from this one paper that the collection is really beautiful. It has a springy, almost tropical feel to it, and there are just some gorgeous colors. You could see here the pink and the blue and the green. I thought that these colors would be great for a tropical photo, and that's what I'm going to be scrapbooking. So I started off by doing some stitching on this wreath. You could see that I used some gold thread, and unfortunately you're not going to see too much of that gold thread in the final product, but I am glad that touches are visible. And then I added some Heidi Swapp Color Shine to the background. I added lots and lots of splatters. I haven't used my Color Shine in quite a while. Now I'm working with my photo. This is a photo of my daughter in Dominican Republic. She went there, I think 2 years ago, and I have been slowly working on her album. She had some photos she took on her phone, and then she also had some photos that were taken on a disposable camera. And I had those photos on a different computer, and I remembered that I had them. The quality of them wasn't quite as good as the photos that were on her phone, but printed small, they were just perfect. And you could see here that this photo really captures that tropical feel. So I thought I would go ahead and use this kit and these beautiful colors that go so nicely with the blues and the pink in the photo. You may have already guessed that the collection is by 49 and Market. They often have wreaths like this in their collections, although it looks very different in every collection. So I wanted to emphasize the pink since there was a lot of blue and just some touches of pink on the wreath. So I used some of the cards or layering pieces that were in one of the embellishment packs that we received. I also used a ticket. There was a little spot that I wanted to fill in, so I used the ticket and I layered that behind those larger pieces. It must have been off camera that I inked all of these pieces that I am layering behind my photo with some distress ink in Vintage Photo. I distressed the edges of the cards with the back of my scissor. This time I actually use the back of my scissor. Sometimes I forget, and I know you're not supposed to, but I will sometimes distress with the blade of my scissor, and you really shouldn't do that. Well, I wanted to include some of these really beautiful blue flowers on the layout. I had it in my head, though, that I wanted the details and the elements, many of them anyway, to be gold. So I decided I would grab some washi tape and then mask off the flower so that just the stamen were left. And now I'm using some gold paint to paint those stamen so that they're going to match with all of the other gold elements that are on my layout. The paint that I'm using is made by Prima. It's called Prima Art Alchemy Metallique, and the color is Ancient Coin. I also add a few touches of another Prima paint. This one is called Art Alchemy Sparks, and the name of the color is Unicorn's Hair. Of course, I want the leaves to match with the stamen and the other gold elements that are on the page. So I once again use some of the Prima paints to paint all the leaves I'm going to include on the layout gold. The unicorn's hair, love that name. It's such a great name for a paint. It's a little bit lighter than the ancient coin. So first I put down a coat of the ancient coin, and then I added a few highlights in the unicorn's hair. I didn't really wait for the first paint to dry. I just added it on top, but I still think that it gave a little bit of variation of color. I'm not sure if you could really see it though. Even though the leaves had some texture, there were a few bumps in them. I found that the stamen were a little bit harder to coat with paint or get an even coat of paint on all of them. So I went back again and I added another coat after that first one. I just wanted to make sure that I got in between all of those stamen. I'm very sorry about the glare. I don't see that when I'm filming, and now I am thinking that's really not very pleasant to look at, so I apologize for that. Now I'm adding a little bit of that unicorn's hair on top of the leaves. Like I said, they're not totally dry, but I think it added a little bit of the look of dimension to the leaves. I went back and painted all of the stamen on all of these beautiful blue flowers with the gold paint. And then I'm so sorry, once again, I don't have footage of me placing the flowers and the leaves onto the layout, but I haven't glued them down yet. I just simply placed the flowers in two different clusters, one in the upper left-hand corner, one in the lower right-hand corner. And then on top of the gold leaves, I layered some die-cut leaves in a couple of places. And I used, once again, the Distress ink in Vintage Photo to ink the edges of those branches. And then I also used the Vintage Photo to ink the edges of the banner that's underneath the title and the dragonflies that you see me placing around the page. Although I don't end up leaving the dragonflies on this layout, I use them on a different layout. My title is Dreamer. Underneath the title, there's a banner that says Dream Big, and then there's a small sentiment that's on the left-hand side of the photo that says Love This Life. I'm going to be using some heavy matte gel medium to attach down all of these flowers that are on the layout. It's my favorite adhesive for attaching flowers down, especially when they are a little bit larger. If there's just a really tiny flower, I will sometimes just use gel glue, but I really like this adhesive because it holds things very tightly to the page. I don't have to worry about them falling off later on. I always use a generous amount of gel medium and one of my really, really old bristle brushes. These brushes are amazing. I have so many newer brushes that fall apart, and although these are really ugly brushes, they're really old and a little bit decrepit looking, they are perfect for things like this. I believe I fussy cut out the hummingbird that's underneath the photo. I put some foam on the back of it and popped it up. I layered it on top of a really similar image of a hummingbird that was right underneath it. I thought that would give it kind of a two-dimensional effect. Because this is a photo of my daughter taken in the Dominican Republic, I had to check whether or not there are actually hummingbirds in DR. I am okay with there being plant species that aren't native there, but if there aren't any hummingbirds, it would be kind of odd for me to be using this paper that has a whole bunch of hummingbirds on it. So with a quick Google search, I was able to find out that there are quite a few species of hummingbirds in DR. Not sure if these are the exact hummingbird species that are depicted on the papers, but I was fine with that. As long as there are some hummingbirds there, I felt like I could use these papers. And then once I felt confident about including hummingbirds on my pages, I scrapbooked another picture from DR using the kit. And I thought that was the nice thing about this collection. It could be used for spring or summer, it could be used for travel, or it could be used for everyday photos. And I do use some everyday photos in my layouts this month. I didn't include all of the footage, but I did the same thing in the top cluster that I did in the bottom cluster. I added some gel medium to all the flowers and to the leaves. I even used gel medium to attach down that leaf die cut. Here you could see that there's a little piece of foam on the back of the fussy cut hummingbird. I add some adhesive and I layer it right on top of the one that's printed on the page. And then I thought it would be nice to have another hummingbird on the wreath. I like the way the hummingbird that I am attaching down now is facing toward the photo. That also has a little bit of foam on the back of it. I add some adhesive to the back of the sentiment that says Love This Life, and I place that down to the left of the photo. I was happy with that placement. And now I'm going to add my title to the page. So I have my title that says Dreamer, and I'm popping that up on some foam also. You can see I'm using white foam because it's a very skinny title. I don't want to use a bright color behind that because chances are you'd be able to see the foam, even if just a little bit from the front. I also popped up the sentiment that says Dream Big on, again, some white foam, and that's going underneath the title. I'm watching the video now, I kind of like the way the banner looked on top of the title, but I wanted to include that dragonfly on the layout and in the title cluster. Even though later on I take the dragonfly away, I do use another embellishment there. I fussy cut out this pink flower because I was thinking that there should be a little bit more pink on the left-hand side of the layout. There's that big pink flower on the right-hand side, and then I thought that this would balance that flower out a little bit. It's a little bit smaller, but it's the same type of flower. So I ink the edges of the flower and then I attach it down. I was thinking there were still some areas on the layout where I could use a little bit more pink, and I found that there was a pink butterfly. So I popped up the wings on some foam, I inked the edges, and then I added the butterfly to the top of the wreath. The title is black and white, and there was nothing else on the page that was also black and white. So I was thinking that I could use this bow underneath the sentiment that's on the photo. The bow actually comes much longer, but I had cut it short for another layout I was going to use it on and then decided not to, but I think it went really well in that little spot underneath the sentiment, "Love This Life." Ever since I started scrapbooking, I have loved to add photo corners to the pictures on my layouts. I used to purchase them, but now I use an EK Success photo corner punch. And of course, having a punch makes it so much easier to match the photo corners to your pattern paper and the rest of your layout. I really wanted to have photo corners that were green, and I didn't want to punch into a 12 by 12 inch paper just for a few little photo corners. So I used one of the embellishments. There were some tickets that were just the right color, so I punched my photo corners out of that. Initially, I was thinking I don't have to have photo corners in all four corners. I'll just punch out two. I was thinking I have two hummingbirds. I should add one more. So I used some foam. I popped up one more hummingbird and I attached it above the top flower cluster. Then I was thinking I want to have a little bit more layering around my photo. So I found this long pink ticket. I inked the edges. I cut the ticket in half and I tucked half on the top of the photo cluster and half on the bottom. And I liked the way that gave a little bit more emphasis to the photo. And I decided that I wanted to have four photo corners and not just two. I like the way the two photo corners look also, but in the end, I thought that four would be better. So I punched out two more and I used ATG adhesive to attach them down, of course, inking them first to match the other two that are already on the photo. And the corner punch is discontinued, but sometimes you can find it on eBay. Over the years, I have made it a habit to add some type of jewel or dot or pearl to the photo corners just to kind of give it a finishing touch. Because I wanted to add a few more touches of black on this layout, I decided to use these very small black enamel dots. Now I'm using some Finnabair heavy white gesso, and I'm using that old bristle brush again. It's perfect for dabbing some gesso onto the flowers. I am not covering the entire flower with the white gesso. I'm just dabbing a little bit around the edges of the petals and also putting a few little touches on the stamen. I add a little bit of white to the leaves as well. If you don't have heavy gesso, you can also use white acrylic paint or you could use regular gesso. I like to use this heavy gesso because I just happen to have it. I've had this container of gesso for so long, it's kind of starting to dry out. So every time I use it, I spray some water in there, hoping to extend the life of it a little bit. And so far, it seems to be working. I like to add finishing touches like pearls and jewels, not just on the photo corners, but in other places on the layout too. And I came across these gold jewels. I thought that they were really pretty. I thought that they went really well with all the other gold on the layout. I end up switching up the jewels a little bit. I'll do that in a little while. But first, I wanted to add some sparkle to the flowers. And for that, I used some Opal glitter medium. And the brand of that is Master's Choice. I got that from Hobby Lobby on one of their big clearance sales. And I find that with this glitter paste, you don't have to be perfect with applying it to the flowers. It makes them really sparkly, and I find it's okay if just some of the areas are sparkly. It doesn't have to be a perfect application. This is when I decided I was going to take away that dragonfly and replace it with this butterfly. I thought that it was perfect. I wanted more pink on the layout, and this butterfly is pink, so I thought that it was a good trade, and then I could use the 3 dragonflies that I have on another layout, which I do end up doing. That's the same butterfly that I had on the wreath earlier, so the wings were already popped up on some foam. All I had to do was move it down to the title cluster. So now I found that I had some smaller versions of those same jewels, so I'm replacing some of the larger ones with some smaller ones, and then I added some small jewels to the blue banner below the title. And then I decided I didn't like the angle of the buds that were coming off of the pink flower on the left, so I trimmed those off. Then I continued adding those very small jewels around the layout. Sometimes I use my scissors to help me position them. I do not have the most delicate fingers, and those jewels are very small, so I find that things like tweezers and scissors come in really handy for me. Now I'm adding some of those very small jewels to the wings of the butterfly. Often I'll put the jewels going down the center of the butterfly, but lately I have been spreading them all over the wings, and I like the way that looks too. I try not to overdo it. I just add 3 jewels on each of the butterfly's wings. And then I love adding jewels to the page, so I continue looking for places to put those smallest jewels. I added 2 of the buds that I had cut off of that flower on the left back to the flower at a different angle, and that is the last touch. This layout is complete, and here are some close-ups. I want to say thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you're enjoying my videos. I really appreciate the views. I am very appreciative of the likes, and I really love reading your comments. Thank you so much for leaving me those. I found this page came together really quickly because the pattern paper does most of the work for you. The composition is already there. You just have to add some embellishments. If you're not a subscriber to My Creative Scrapbook and you think you might be interested, you can check out the link to the My Creative Scrapbook website in the description box. I would also recommend checking out their Instagram account where you can get lots of great ideas. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.